Hi, I'm Paul. I've just been having a look into the third eye. And I suppose when I say I've been looking into the third eye, I guess what I'm saying is I've been using the third eye to look into the third eye. And I thought I would do a video to share what I've seen. So a lot of people talk about the third eye as being an eye that looks inwards. And I suppose some people say that you need to awaken the third eye. The way that I seen it, it was a little bit different to this. You see, to me, it seems like the third eye is the mind. I'm going to explain a little bit more on this because there's a lot of different ways that people use the idea of the mind. But what I'm saying is the brain is more like a storage device. It stores memory, like, let's say, a library. And the mind uses or works through the brain. But I'm going to say that the mind is separate to the brain as we know it. Now, the reason why I'm saying as we know it is because it might just be that the mind is part of the brain that we don't have access to, let's say, when we're occupied in the world of thought. But for now, I'm just going to stick with saying that the mind is separate to the brain. The brain is a storage device, and the mind works through the brain. And I'm also going to say that as we know it, the third eye is always open. Whether we live in the world of illusion or thought or dreaming, the third eye is always awake. However, in the world of thought, it doesn't seem to have any ability, let's say, to be no, not ability. In the world of continuous thought, where there's no space, the mind isn't seen. We'll get on to that in a bit. So what I'm saying is the third eye is the mind, the brain is the storage. Now I also think that thought, or the world of thought, is in the brain, not in the mind. So in other words, it's as if in the world of thought, the brain is just working from knowledge, memory, but a certain type of knowledge created by thought. And it seems that this mind doesn't have access to that part of the brain. So I think that the bit that's actually getting enlightened or awakening with the third eye is not the third eye so much itself, but the part of the brain that the third eye uses, let's say. So we can say that the brain itself is knowledge, but we, in the closed state, or when the brain is so occupied with thought, we only have access to a part of the brain, or even a part of the brain. But it does seem to be that there's another part of the brain in between, let's say, two thoughts. We can call that being a space. And in this space, there's an observation of the other part of the brain. The only trouble is, a lot of us don't have a lot of space in between two thoughts to be able to observe this part of the brain. We could say that the other part of the brain sees things totally different. Now, firstly, we can say, well, a lot of people do say that thought can't see itself, but I think that thought can see itself, but only in the sense that it can put thought into a correct space, in the sense it could put a round peg in a round hole or a square peg in a square hole, but it can't see the environment, circumstance, so on. Like, thought can't see your feelings. It can try to make descriptions, but it can't see your feelings or even its own feelings. We could say that through thought is like looking through a tube. When we look through a tube, all we see is the destination through the tube and not the environment around it. You see, it's very limited. But in the space of thought, there's another part of the brain. Now, this other part of the brain can see the whole. It sees all of the surrounding, or let's say around the tube, and what's in the tube. But it can't see, like I say, through the tube and only see a destination. It can't focus on one spot. So you see, if you try to focus on one thing in the brain, then this has to be the part of the brain of thought. I mean, it's pretty easy to see this. The moment you focus on something, everything else disappears. But then you're trying to explain the thing in the world of thought. Take away thought, take away the focusing on one thing and see the whole. There's peace, space. And this can only be seen by the part of the brain that many of us don't often use. So when I say the awakening of the third eye is not the awakening of the eye itself, it's the awakening of a part of the brain that can only happen in space, in peace. You see, creating peace opens up this space rather than seeing one, focusing on one piece, like looking through a tube. When you create the space, you see the whole. So it does seem that it opens up a whole world of more information, I guess. You start to see the surrounding circumstances, feelings, whereas thought can only see destination. So to me, I think the only way that we can awaken this part of the brain, which, like I say, is already there, but it can only be seen in peace or in space. Trouble is, a lot of us are so attached to thought, we barely get a moment of silence or peace to be able to see the other part of the brain. I know in enlightenment, or waking, or whatever you want to call that rubbish, there seems to be a lot of distress when crossing over let's say, to this part of the brain. Now, I think that because we've been so attached to thought, firstly, we could say that thought has always give the appearance that it's in control, or the appearance that it gives security, which it doesn't. It gives the opposite. But not only the fear of losing that, because of the neglect of the part of the brain that thought has neglected, I think that this part of the brain has become, do I say disordered? Meaning not being correctly stored in order. Or its contents, should I say. Some people say that you can waken up in an instant. And I think you can waken in an instant. But then there's still more to go. Because you've got to start seeing the world in a different way and, let's say, reorganize the part of the brain that's been neglected. Learn to see the world in a different way, which is to learn to use the brain in a different way. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are listening who have maybe had glances of the awakening, or let's say this part of the brain that's been neglected, but can't seem to keep it. Now, if we say that this part of the brain can only be seen, or the mind could only work through this part of the brain in space or in peace, and we have to bring peace to the part of the brain that uses thought. Now, it seems to me that this part of the brain is motivated by fear and desire or excitement. See, it's always trying to chase away from fear. So the illusion of thought is always trying to keep itself away from fear, but the fear was created in thought. So fear itself is thought. So thought has created fear, and then created desire to keep away from fear. Now, as long as there's chasing desire or trying to run away from fear, then there's movement of thought. Hi. Sorry, just someone walking past. So as long as there's movement in thought, then there's no space for the other part of the brain to be used, or for the mind to work through. You see, for the people who have had glances, maybe we can say there's times you've done meditation and you've managed to move away from anywhere where thought can perceive fear. And therefore, thought seems to have subsided. But then when you put yourself into an environment where thought itself can perceive fear again, then the fear's back. And therefore, you're not enlightened. But then because of this, you want to seek desire to move away from fear, and then you're back in the same trap chasing your tail. But just remember that fear was created by thought in the first place. And now thought's trying to escape fear by creating more thought. Anyway, I think that's all I've got to talk about, so thank you very much for listening.